you might be more attractive than the ones who get all the attention. Have you ever noticed something strange, that the most attractive men are often the ones who have no idea how attractive they are? Not because they lack confidence, but because they've gotten used to no one ever saying it out loud. You see, there are plenty of men out there who constantly get attention. They speak loudly, they wear bold clothes, they post photos every day. They crave the spotlight, and the crowd often turns toward them. But then there's another kind of man, quieter, more composed. He shows up just enough. He doesn't brag. He doesn't chase attention. And because of that, he assumes he's nothing special. Have you ever seen yourself in that man when you walk into a gathering? You join conversations but never dominate them. You don't try to be funny. You don't seek validation. You're just you. And at the end of the night, you leave thinking, no one noticed me, but maybe someone did. Maybe someone looked at you more than once. Maybe someone brushed past you on purpose. Maybe someone wanted to ask you something, but your calm presence made them hesitate. Attraction doesn't look like a spotlight. It doesn't come with applause. It requires someone with enough sensitivity to notice it. But if you yourself can't notice it, how can you ever live in alignment with it? Women aren't drawn to noise. They're drawn to what they feel, to presence, to steadiness, to the way you hold yourself without trying to prove anything. When a woman feels safe around you, when she senses that you're a place she can be without armor, she's pulled in. You don't have to talk much. You don't have to be the best looking. You just have to make her feel something, but most men don't realize this. They think if they were attractive, women would say something. They'd compliment. They'd be direct. They'd make it obvious. What they forget is that the most meaningful things in life are often unspoken. Real attraction doesn't live in words. It lives in what people never find the courage to say. And sadly, though, many men go their entire lives never realizing they were once deeply loved in silence. They pass by lingering eyes. They miss subtle signals. They move through moments that, if they had paid just a little more attention, would have revealed that someone's heart was quietly reaching for them. You might be one of those men. You might have been noticed more than you ever knew. Remembered in late-night thoughts, mentioned in conversations you never heard. But because you labeled yourself as average, you stopped noticing and you stopped observing. You never learned to read the unspoken language, and that's what buried every opportunity you never knew you had. The truth is, you might be more attractive than the ones getting all the attention, but you've never learned how to see yourself as someone worth being looked at. And that, more than anything else, is what's kept you hidden in silence. A silence that didn't come from the world. It came from within. From the way you've been taught to define yourself. From years of comparison. From your father's distance. From the absence of recognition in your early years. From rejections that made you wear a label you were never meant to wear. But from this moment on, you'll begin seeing differently. When you step into a room, when you sit in a conversation, and when you walk past a group. Don't look at who's being the loudest. Pay attention to who looks at you differently when you're not paying attention. Observe, not to jump to conclusions, but because real attraction asks for patience. Patience to perceive what's already happening, and more importantly, to perceive yourself clearly, maybe for the first time. Women don't speak with words, they speak with positioning. If you've ever believed that no one has ever been interested in you, maybe you've been waiting for the wrong signals. Maybe you've been expecting a woman to walk up, look you in the eyes, and say she finds you attractive. But that rarely happens. Not because you're not attractive, but because women don't communicate that way. When a man likes someone, he often acts directly. He makes a move, starts a conversation, says what he feels. But for women, it's completely different. Women are driven by emotion, but their emotions are always filtered through a defense system built to protect them. She may feel drawn to you, but she's also afraid of being rejected, afraid of being judged, afraid of being misunderstood. So instead of taking the risk, she communicates in the safest way she knows, without words. Have you ever noticed a woman glance at you and then quickly look away? Then a few minutes later, she does it again, and then again. Have you noticed that somehow throughout the entire evening, she always seems to be nearby? She doesn't talk to you, she doesn't make a move, she's just there, in your line of sight. Not close enough to raise suspicion, but not far enough to miss anything you say or do. That's not random. That's a silent strategy. That's how a woman tests your energy, feels your presence, positions herself near you without risking her comfort or reputation. If you respond positively, she might slowly move closer. If you ignore her or seem cold, she'll retreat without a trace. How many moments in your life have you dismissed as coincidence, when in truth, they were quiet attempts to reach you? The time she sat next to you in a meeting when there were plenty of other seats. The time she laughed at your joke even though you weren't talking to her. The time your eyes met, then broke contact too quickly, only to meet again moments later. A light brush of the shoulder, a vague question, a shared hallway. You saw it as nothing, but for her it might have been everything. Women have a way of getting close without stepping forward. They want you to feel them without declaring their presence. That's an art, and if you don't recognize it, you'll miss it every time like it never happened. The female world is a world of indirect signals. And if you haven't learned to read that language, you're moving through life like a blind man in a city full of light. You'll walk past chances you never even knew existed. You'll believe you're invisible when someone's been watching you all along. She doesn't speak with her mouth because speaking gives away her power. She speaks through location, through space, through eye contact, through patterns, through proximity, through energy. Men often wait for clear actions, a compliment, a touch, a conversation starter. But they forget this for many women. Just standing near you is an act of bravery. Choosing to be within your reach when she could be anywhere else is already a decision. Looking at you more than once in a single night means she's crossed an internal threshold. You may have missed hundreds of these moments in your life. You've labeled yourself not attractive enough just because no one flirted with you the way you expected. But your mistake wasn't your looks or your presence. Your mistake was listening for the wrong language. Start watching the world again. When you're at a party, in a meeting, sitting in a cafe, walking through a class, don't just listen to what's being said. Watch for positioning. Look at who places themselves nearby, who lingers, who glances and looks away, who shows up around you without needing a reason, who reacts to your presence without saying a word. You don't need to jump to conclusions, just observe. Observe to realize that the world is speaking to you. Women are sending signals. But if you're not paying attention, you'll live your whole life as a man standing just outside the door. You'll keep thinking you're being ignored, while everything around you is quietly pointing at you. You're not invisible. You've just never learned to see with your second set of eyes. The ones that don't see with sight, but with awareness. And once you do, you'll realize you were never really alone the way you thought you were. When you walk into a room, the air speaks for you. There's a kind of presence that needs no words, yet changes everything around it. Not because you're trying to be noticed, not because you're dressed to impress, but because you carry an energy that people can't ignore. They call it the halo effect, the subtle shift that happens when someone walks into a room and suddenly others adjust themselves without knowing why. Conversations pause, heads turn, postures straighten, phones go back into pockets. It's unconscious. No one does it because you asked. They do it because something in you made them pause. That's what they call dominance energy. But not the kind that dominates others. It's the kind that brings clarity, calm, and certainty. Real attractive men don't need to be loud. They don't need to stand in the middle. They don't need to pat shoulders or tell big jokes. They simply need to be present. And that alone shifts the atmosphere. Have you ever stepped into a group and noticed someone subtly making space for you? Have you ever started speaking and the volume in the room dropped? People looked toward you, not because you interrupted, but because they sensed they should listen. That doesn't happen for everyone. But when it happens to you, understand this, it's not by chance. Real attraction doesn't come from your words or actions. It comes from your inner weight, when you walk into a space without needing to perform, defend, or impress. You carry a frequency that others instinctively want to match. That's the truth of presence. You don't follow the rhythm of the room. You become the rhythm the room aligns itself to. But most men don't realize this. They think they need to do something. Say something. Be funny. Be impressive. Flash accomplishments. Show status. They think attraction is built with effort. But they forget this one truth: presence, when solid enough, speaks louder than effort ever could. You don't need to be the center of attention. You just need to be real, grounded, and quiet in your strength. People will adjust to you. They'll lean in. They'll wait. They'll wonder. Not because you demand it, but because your calm forces them to slow down and notice what's real. That's the power of true attraction. You don't have to chase the spotlight. You become the gravity that draws others in. You might not notice it, but when you begin to speak, others fall silent faster. When you react, people listen more closely. When you nod, people feel seen. And when you walk away, the energy of the group shifts because your absence leaves a mark, even if no one says it. No one can teach you how to create this because it's not something you manufacture, it's something you become. It's the result of quiet self-work, of growth, of surviving what you never talk about. It's what's left when you no longer need to prove anything to feel worthy. And that inner calm, that quiet power becomes the silent signal that draws people closer, makes them want to hear you, understand you, be near you. You don't have to speak louder to be heard. You don't have to show off to be seen. If your presence is real, the whole room will begin to lean in even if you say nothing at all. And one day, it happens. You enter a space. You don't say a word. You don't try to make eye contact. You don't do anything. But someone puts their phone away. Someone else turns to look. A few eyes begin scanning the crowd, and they land on you. And in that moment, you realize something powerful. You walked into the room. You didn't speak. But people were already listening. The silent competition from other men around you. True attractiveness isn't only reflected through how women respond to you. It's just as clearly shown in how other men react when you're around. In mixed environments, men's reactions are often even more honest. They don't wrap their emotions in politeness. They act instinctively, and that instinct is one of the clearest mirrors of where you truly stand in the social hierarchy. There are three common ways men respond when they sense someone has a stronger presence or greater pull than they do. The first is imitation. They won't say you're attractive, but they'll start shifting their behavior. They'll get the same haircut, dress like you, copy the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you respond. You'll see pieces of yourself reflected back at you, only slightly off. It's not a coincidence. It's a silent confession: I want to be more like him. The second is respect. This shows up when they invite you into the group, ask your opinion, create space for you to speak. They want you around because they know your presence makes the room better. They don't feel threatened, they feel elevated, and that respect doesn't need to be spoken out loud. You feel it. But the third kind, that's the one that shows you most clearly how powerful your presence really is. It's competition. They start raising their voices the moment you begin speaking. They interrupt your stories with louder ones. They steal attention with jokes, flexes, exaggerated energy. They try to become the center the second you arrive. You see it in meetings. You share an idea and someone immediately challenges it, not because it's wrong, but because they don't want you to be right. You see it at work when people who used to ignore you suddenly start trying to outshine you. On social media, when you post something that resonates, and they rush to post something similar, just flashier. And if you're not aware, you might think you're being challenged, excluded, dismissed. But the truth is the opposite. Their behavior is proof that you make them feel small. They don't act this way with everyone. They don't interrupt people who don't threaten their status. They don't perform in front of people they feel superior to. They do it to you because your presence unsettles them. When a man isn't sure he's being seen, he tries to take the spotlight. But when you walk into a space and are already being seen without effort, he senses it and his defenses kick in. What's fascinating is that this silent competition doesn't come with formal declarations. It unfolds daily, quietly, but very, very clearly. You hear it in the pitch of their voice, see it in the shift of their posture, feel it in the forced laughter, the snide jokes, the subtle pushback. But if you look deeper, you'll understand this is how they're measuring you, not with compliments, but with reactions, with effort, with resistance. The quieter you are, the louder they get. The more grounded you stay, the more they scramble. The simpler you are, the more complex they become. And when this happens enough times, you realize you don't need to prove anything. Your presence is already speaking for you. The way other men react around you is the most objective social feedback you'll ever receive. It doesn't lie, it doesn't flatter. And once you recognize this, you'll stop doubting yourself. You don't need their approval. Sometimes, the loudest sign of your power is how hard someone else works to cover it. Mature attractiveness comes after many falls. He walked into the cafe one quiet morning. There was nothing flashy about him. No handsome face, no athletic build, no designer fragrance or perfectly tailored suit. But the moment he sat down and spoke his order, the entire room seemed to slow down. The barista paused. The nearby tables turned their heads. A young woman reading a book looked up, slightly startled. No one could explain why, but everyone felt something shift. That wasn't about appearance. That was depth. That was presence. That was the kind of energy that only forms after years of falling down and standing back up. The mature man doesn't need to stand out. He's been through enough to know how little surface-level things really matter. What remains is how he responds to pain, how he carries himself after loss, how calmly he sits with silence, with loneliness, with uncertainty. Women can feel that, not with logic, but with intuition. with a kind of ancient radar they carry within them. When a man enters a space without trying to impress, without overpowering, without performing, yet still causes the room to settle, a woman feels something shift, a quiet safety, a grounded presence. He doesn't need to talk about what he's been through, because the silence in him says enough. No man holds that steady gaze without having known heartbreak. No man speaks with that steady voice without having been broken. No one sits that still unless he's once had his sense of self taken away and fought to reclaim it. Women are drawn to depth. They don't always say it, but they feel pulled toward the kind of man they can't figure out in one glance. Someone who makes them want to learn more, ask more, understand more. A man who seems to carry something behind his words, behind his eyes, behind his calm. Mature attractiveness isn't something you can fake. It's the result of time, of pain, of walking through your youth without losing your character, of forgiving yourself for your mistakes, and most of all, of not letting your wounds turn you bitter. There's a saying I believe in: you don't need the spotlight. You are the light. You don't need someone to highlight you. You don't need the stage. You don't need to be seen to be significant. When you've truly lived, you become the quiet glow others are drawn to because your light makes them feel clearer within themselves. And because of that, you never need to compete with youth. Youth attracts with appearance, but maturity attracts with a kind of depth that others can't touch. Youth gets the glance, maturity holds the gaze. Youth stirs the moment, maturity lingers long after. Youth creates a spark. Maturity builds a quiet fire that keeps others warm. And in this world, where everyone's trying to be louder, faster, funnier, the man who walks into a room slowly, calmly, with no need to prove anything, makes all the noise around him sound like background static. That kind of attraction doesn't scream, but it carries weight. It's not loud, but it stays with people. It doesn't demand, but it makes people want to stay close. And sometimes, that quiet stillness is exactly what a woman remembers long after the night has ended. If you've ever thought your most attractive years are behind you, you've misunderstood something. It's possible that now in this season, when you've slowed down, when you've come to know yourself better, when you've stopped trying to please everyone, you're actually at your most magnetic. Because men don't fully ripen in their 20s. They ripen in the silence after the storm, in the strength found after surviving what no one else saw, in the age when you no longer chase, but still arrive full, in the moment you no longer try to stand out because you've become so grounded. People quietly lean in. You are the light others didn't expect. When you see yourself, the world will see you too. There's something strange about life that most people never realize. The world won't fully see you until you see yourself first. You can walk past hundreds of people, step into dozens of rooms, join countless conversations, and still be invisible. If deep down, you believe you are. Real attractiveness doesn't begin with someone else's eyes. It begins with how you walk into a space, with how fully you allow yourself to exist in your own skin, with whether or not you give yourself permission to truly be there. It's time to redefine what attraction really is. It's not the recognition you get from others. It's not compliments, attention, or public validation. Real attraction is when you live in alignment with your true worth, without needing anyone to approve it. When you walk into a place and no longer feel the need to shrink. When you look in the mirror clearly and stop pretending you don't see what's already there. And something incredible happens when you change the way you see yourself. The world starts to change the way it sees you too. From this moment on, try something simple yet powerful. In your next 3 social situations, whether it's work, casual, or with friends, change just one thing: the energy you bring. In the first meeting, try standing taller, move more slowly, listen with intention, speak with calm certainty. Don't try to impress. Just hold your space with quiet confidence. In the second, hold your gaze longer in conversations, and not with aggression, not with judgment. Just let the other person know that you're actually present, fully there. And in the third, walk into that room as if you need nothing from it. Don't prove, don't perform. Just carry the belief that you belong there because you do. Then observe. Watch how people respond. Notice if their eyes linger just a little longer. See how conversations shift when you speak. Pay attention to whether men seem more guarded, whether women seem more open. And most of all, sense if your energy is quietly shaping the room. You'll be surprised. Not because people suddenly changed, but because you finally noticed what's been happening all along. The world doesn't reflect who you pretend to be. It mirrors who you silently believe you are. If you walk through life convinced you're not magnetic, you'll act like it's true. You'll speak smaller, move smaller, avoid eye contact, and people will overlook you not because you're unworthy, but because you told the world not to look. But when you stand in your full presence, when you carry yourself like someone who's already enough, you don't need to ask for attention. People give it naturally, not because you're flashy, but because you're real. Attractiveness is no longer a game of looks or charm. It's a blend of inner alignment and outer energy. It's when you don't overwhelm anyone, but still make them want to stay longer without knowing why. And the most beautiful part is this: no one can give you your attractiveness, because no one has that power. The world can only notice what you've already accepted about yourself. So from now on, stop waiting for others to give you permission to show up. Walk in like someone who knows what they bring. You don't need a standing ovation. You just need quiet respect. And that starts from within. Maybe you've been rejected before. Maybe you've been overlooked. Maybe someone left. Maybe you loved and weren't loved back. But none of that defines you. It was all just a test to see how clearly you could still see yourself in a world that forgot to look. And if right now, as you hear these words, something in you stirs, even just slightly, like a quiet voice finally being heard for the first time, maybe that's you seeing yourself. Finally, after all this time. And once you see yourself, don't worry. The world will catch up soon enough. Because this wasn't just a video. This was a reminder that you were never ordinary.